Hello, hello, hello. My name's Alexander. Welcome to my channel, where I read everything so you can find your next best read. This month, I'll be talking about the 16 books I read in June. I will preface this video by saying I am writing several rom-coms and dealing with a divorce. So this month, I'm reading a lot more about love. Number one is Adulthood Rites. This book picks up after the events in Dawn, which, if you haven't read yet, stop this video, go read it. It's amazing. Or check out my review. Dawn is one of my favorite books of all time. In fact, I love Dawn so much that I'm adapting it for television. My love for Dawn probably colors my love for Adulthood Rites, but I think Adulthood Rites stands on its own merits. No spoilers. Dawn followed the Oankali's attempts to get the humans to interbreed with them. It's a resplendent, haunting tale about bodily consent every reader in the world could benefit from reading. Normally, I'm not one to make such big proclamations, nor do I think that every book should be for everybody. Dawn is such a book that I believe everybody could benefit from. Anyways, Adulthood Rites, Dawn's sequel, follows Lilith's son, Akin, who is kidnapped by the so-called rebel humans, who, unsurprisingly, don't want to interbreed with the aliens. Since Akin is only 18 months old when he's kidnapped, the trap this book could have easily fallen into is the faux naive. The child would necessarily need to have profound observations in baby talk, which could be really weird. Octavia Butler gets around this by making the hybrid children incredibly advanced for their age, unbeknownst to most humans. So the hybrid babies have superior cognitive and linguistic skills, even though their small bodies aren't fully developed to the extent that human adults would be. So there's a physical aspect that's constraining the hybrid babies. But it's not weird. Akin is vulnerable in his fragile body, albeit with superior cognitive abilities. That keeps the interpersonal relationships as he tries to return home interesting. Each human has a different relationship with Akin, based on a number of different things, including how much they know about his true cognitive capabilities. The end of this novel sets the series up for the third book. My opinion is that for what Adulthood Rites is attempting to do on its own terms, the ending could have been set up in a different way, which would have required the beginning to be set up in a different way. While the book is a strong follow-up to its predecessor, it is unfortunately not as good as Dawn, as few books ever can be. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I hated this movie, is the title of this book. If you don't know film critic Roger Ebert, I'd highly recommend checking out some of his work. He's got different things for different people. One thing he's notable for, among many others, is being the first movie critic to win the Pulitzer Prize for his writing, which he did in 1975. His style is super accessible, funny, concise, and thought-provoking. I hated this movie. It's no different. This book belongs to a published series of his 0 to 2 star reviews of movies. The other titles are A Horrible Experience of Unbearable Length and Your Movie Sucks. If you're into films, screenwriting at all, this book is for you. So much effort is expended in other screenwriting books about how to make a movie good. The obverse is never questioned. What makes a movie bad? If you're a film buff, this is a great perspective on both the film industry and films. Beyond just saving yourself the need to watch so many 0 to 2 star movies, you'll also gain appreciation for how many things can go wrong in a film and how many things need to go right in order for a good film to be produced. From one reviewer to another, chef's kiss. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Station 11. This is a book about society as we know it, ending from a viral pandemic. If the subject matter doesn't dissuade you from reading this book, then please listen on. It's okay to have physiological responses to certain things. Station 11 follows at least five different major viewpoint characters after society collapses from this pandemic. So to give you an idea of whether or not this book is for you, I try to sketch out the plot points so you can identify whether or not this book is interesting for you. It's a little hard to do that for this book for a number of reasons. So the five viewpoint characters, if I tell you those, the plot will sort of start coming together. There's Kristen Thompson, Arthur Leander, Jeevan Chaudhry, Miranda Carroll, and Clark Thompson. Station 11 involves a pandemic and how the people try to live after it. But most of the story is told through flashbacks, especially focusing on Miranda Carroll, her life, work, and relationships, especially with Arthur Leander, an incredibly famous Hollywood actor, whom Miranda Carroll just happens to meet. You really only get one buy per book, and in this case, I believe Emily St. John Mandel's buy would be that there's this viral pandemic that destroys society. So then when I also have to believe that this woman from a small town happens to meet a super famous Hollywood actor who also takes an interest in her and starts a relationship with her because they're both from the small same island in Canada. Now I have to believe in two things, and I really wish I only had to believe in one. But anyways, Miranda Carroll and Arthur Leander have this relationship that's sort of on again, off again, but not even really. The in-book present-day storyline involves a troupe of traveling Shakespeare actors who wander around performing. That concept alone would have been fascinating, but it gets eclipsed by Miranda's rag to riches story that's told in the past. Miranda finds herself spending her time in the past writing a comic book series called Station 11, which is where the book gets its name from. If this novel already feels somewhat convoluted, that's because it is. The story starts with Jeevan Chaudhry, who resuscitates or tries to resuscitate Arthur Leander, who has a heart attack on stage during a play in which Arthur Leander is an actor. The same Jeevan then prepares and waits out the pandemic in his brother's apartment. We find out that Jeevan was also a former paparazzo and entertainment journalist whose life just happens to intersect Miranda Carroll and Arthur Leander's lives, seemingly whenever the plot demands it. Some people like when things so neatly intersect. I believe the most interesting parts of a story are the relationships between and among people. When events happen so fortuitously, it robs the characters of what could have been excellent character development. I don't believe that the most interesting way to tell any of these stories is to have Jeevan be the person who takes an unflattering paparazzo photo of Miranda Carroll as she's having a disagreement with her wildly successful actor boyfriend, Arthur Leander. For want of plot, I give this book a 1.5 out of 5 stars. The All or Nothing Marriage. Some books just aren't meant to be read. What I mean by that is a book's primary aim is not with the impression it will create on readers. Instead, it's for the authors to express themselves, and the readers are a pocket issue. The central premise of The All or Nothing Marriage is that marriage used to be an institution where you'd get some things out of the relationship, but not everything. Your husband or wife might give you a family or an income, but you'd have friends in whom to confide your feelings, to play sports with, to elicit advice from, and so on. That's why people in days of yore could marry their neighbor and be happy. Nowadays, marriage is this sort of thing where in addition to getting a sexual partner, your husband or wife is also your best friend, your closest confidant, your financial partner, and more. While today's people are happier in marriages than people of yore were in their marriages, fewer people are married because the demands of marriage are greatly increased. That's the central argument. I vociferously argue against a summary doing a book justice. This is one of the few cases in my life when I feel that a few paragraphs can do the work of an entire book, which makes me feel terrible. 1 out of 5 stars. Why Marriages Fail is the name of the next book. So this book purports to be about what it says in the title. You would think from the title that's what this book would be all about. But hear me out, because I think this book might be useful to more people than its title alleges. Here's why. The book starts with an interesting fact that's as credible as any other social psychology fact. The book says that you can have negative interactions in a relationship, but for a relationship to work, for every one negative interaction, you need to have 5 positive interactions. That insight can be helpful in a non-scientific way to help you understand how to balance interactions with people. Relationships can't be all positive, nor should they be overwhelmingly negative. The book argues that most marriages fail not because people argue, but because of how they argue. In fact, some couples argue all the time, and that makes their relationship stronger. The author spends the length of the book investigating how to argue with your partner without producing the worst possible outcome, breaking up. In that regard, this book is somewhat of a misnomer. It's not why marriages fail, but why relationships fail. The book could be rewritten to expound that thesis. Or it could more substantively discuss what about arguing and what about these types of arguments cause marriages in specific to fail. As far as I could tell, the argument types weren't exclusively impactful to married couples, even though the discussion of that was somewhat useful. In a sense that the book fails to acknowledge what about arguing in certain ways impacts marriages in specific, it fails to do what it's setting out to do. It could have set out to do something different and have been more successful, in my opinion. Add to all of that the gender stereotypes, which are terrible, and the heteronormativity in this book, and something that could have been a lot better gets 1.5 out of 5 stars. How to Know a Person. I don't know why I borrowed this book. I really don't, but a lot of books look interesting and turn out to be missable. So hear me out on this one, because this book surprised me. The title itself is both bland and shocky. How to Know a Person. The book starts with this line. If you ever saw the old movie, Fiddler on the Roof, you know how warm and emotional Jewish families can be. Okay, that first line struck me as odd insofar as first lines go. Right in the beginning, the author quotes a William Ickles study. How well do you think people are at getting to know one another? Okay, so maybe if you're meeting a stranger for the first time, classic first impressions can be wrong. The William Ickles study says that your first impression of a stranger is accurate only 20% of the time. What about when it's someone you know? Of course, if you know them, then you're going to understand what they're saying most of the time, right? Wrong. When you're talking to a close friend or family member, the William Ickles study found that people only understand close friends and family's intentions correctly 35% of the time. So the book then goes on to talk about empathy, but actually speak about what empathy is, not some corporate sensitivity training campaign empathy. What empathy actually means. The book talks about what constitutes a person, what hard conversations are, how to have them, how to understand the energy you bring to a relationship. It helps you understand your life task, and it helps you understand how your ancestors show up in your day-to-day life, in your actions. And in such a way, the book helps you understand how these things are true for other people. And in that sense, the book succeeds in doing what it sets out to do. It succeeds very well in helping you to get to know somebody. Personally, I find that most people are overconfident in their ability to get to know someone's intentions. I like to think that I'm better than 35%, but I am people. So of course I would think that. This book was such a fantastic reminder for how often I feel like people are wrong, but how often I feel like I'm right about knowing someone's intentions. And it remains a very powerful reminder in my life. I can't recommend this book highly enough. It's definitely top 10 this year, maybe even top 5. I give How to Know a Person 5 out of 5 stars. Modern romance. You might expect a guide on modern dating written by Aziz Ansari, to be full of nothing but cockamamie advice. This book was written in the long tradition of professional with subject matter expertise who pairs up to co-write a book with a famous person in order to capture a wider audience. So to that end, Aziz Ansari actually co-wrote this book with Eric Kinberg, NYU professor of sociology. They went as far as to create their own subreddit to ask questions for this book. Thousands of people answered. The book also conducted focus groups on 3 different continents. And in that regard, the book does the best job at diagnosing and solving some of the greatest quandaries of modern dating, or modern romance as the title might have it. Far from being absolutely unserious, Aziz Ansari proposes a useful new paradigm for modern dating. In the beginning of the book, he echoes a bit of what we talked about before in the all-or-nothing marriage. He also goes over the history of online dating by comparing it to personal ads, phone dating, and video dating services. The proposal for the new dating paradigm is to use the apps as an introduction service to meet people and doing an activity rather than meeting up for drinks or food. This has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, not everyone has adopted this worldview, and in my experience, it's hard to convince people over the app that they should give it a try. The salve to that may be to have more people read this book. So I would definitely give this a shot if I were you. Single, checking out the dating market, perhaps a bit frustrated. If you're tired of going on a million first dates, I'd highly recommend this book. 3 out of 5 stars. A horrible experience of unbearable length. This book is another volume of Roger Ebert's 0 to 2 star reviews. The review for this installment is much the same as I hated this movie. If you're a film buff, a screenwriter, entertainment industry executive, this book has untold knowledge for you. And even then, you start to get Roger Ebert's central criticisms after a volume or 2. If what I just said doesn't appeal to you, you might probably skip this one. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Call Me by Your Name. This book taught me that it's okay to read smut sometimes. I always want sometimes for literary narratives to be a little smutty. I'm interested in queer narratives, and obviously this book garnered a lot of attention in its day. So I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I have to share some spoilers to adequately describe my thoughts relating to this book. Feel free to fast forward to the next chapter of this video if you don't want this book to be spoiled. I enjoyed the story for what it was worth. Elio, the twink, the 17-year-old, has a steamy romance with Oliver, the 24-year-old graduate student who lives with Elio's family in Italy for the summer. Their romance pursues, they have liaison dangereuse, so to speak. Then Oliver returns to the US after a tearful goodbye, and seemingly out of nowhere, Oliver is getting married to a woman. Said woman was never broached before. Only Oliver's bisexuality was hinted at. And I'm not doing bi erasure here. My issue is with the technical elements of setting up Oliver's end to the relationship with Elio. I don't think it was set up correctly for the reader to enjoy the resulting conflict. The book ends with huge time jumps as Elio is an adult and Oliver comes to find him. This would have been a perfect middle of the book. Come to find out, there's a sequel to the book Call Me by Your Name that tells the story of the adult men's lives. While reading this book, the suddenness of Oliver's marriage threw me off from appreciating him as a match for Elio. Combining the 2 books, Call Me by Your Name, and the future volume that details the adult men's relationship with one another would have made this one single proposed book so much better. As it is, Call Me by Your Name still gets a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Confederacy of Dunces. What can be said about Confederacy of Dunces? I read it. This book was published posthumously after the author John Kennedy Toole's death. The mother discovered the manuscript for the book after the author passed. She realized the book was actually pretty good, and she just kept bothering Walker Percy to get him to shepherd it through publication. And she was right. It really was a good book. The story follows Ignatius J. Riley on a series of misanthropic adventures as he struggles to hold down a job. There's not much of a plot, as is characteristic of literary novels. Ignatius J. Riley is supremely unlikable, lazy, pugnacious, quixotic, yet somehow extremely likable. If you love Americana, stories from the South, or very unlikable characters, this one's for you. 3.5 out of 5 stars. The Big Picture. The New Logic of Money and Power in Hollywood. I am fascinated by Hollywood accounting, a process whereby studios find creative ways to avoid paying people. The author of this book, Edward J. Epstein, was a Harvard PhD who went on to become an investigative journalist. While investigating this topic, he got insider access to Hollywood, including payroll, never publicly seen contracts, and Hollywood insiders' personal knowledge of how the system really works. He's able to report some of these things on the condition of anonymity, and he's able to corroborate everything else through very detailed reporting. For example, he points out that although the studio system was banned from using block booking in the landmark 1948 Supreme Court case in the United States v. Paramount, the studios continue to use the system abroad to minimize the amount of residual payments due for movies. Block booking, if you don't know, is the practice of selling a block of movies to the movie theater. It allows the studios to say, okay, movie theater chains abroad, if you want Harry Potter, the movie, you have to exhibit all of these other films as well. We're only going to sell them to you as a block. Now, if Harry Potter, for example, has to pay the talent based on a percentage of gross receipts, that is, money earned, the studio can report back from the block reported abroad, and, if memory serves, divvies up among the entire block, so Harry Potter only earns a percentage of international proceeds. So, for example, if there were maybe 9 movies in that entire block, Harry Potter is one of them, Harry Potter was a smash hit, and the other 8 did not do so well, the studio can take the international profits from Harry Potter and assign them to other movies. So the other 8 movies that didn't do so well commercially will instead get some of the money from the Harry Potter block booking. That will make these movies seem a little bit better commercially, but it won't push these other 8 movies to the point the studio doesn't have to give the people involved with those other 8 movies any more profit. The studio can just keep all of it from abroad. The 9th movie, Harry Potter, is the one actually producing the profit in this example, but the studio doesn't have to report that Harry Potter actually produced the profit because they didn't sell Harry Potter. They sold a block. This book's tone is extremely cynical, but I found the work quite refreshing. As a writer, it helped me understand what studios want so I can provide that to them all the easier. Honestly, 5 out of 5 stars. The Midnight Library. A woman finds herself extremely depressed and decides to unalive herself. This woman gets caught in a limbo between life and unlife. The woman finds herself at the Midnight Library, where she can see how her life would have turned out in an infinite number of alternative circumstances. Despite the serious subject matter, or in fact, because of it, this book is heartwarming and life-affirming, and one of my favorite books of all time. I seriously could not have written this book better. 5 out of 5 stars. This is a queer sci-fi heist with elements from Hawaiian culture. The main character, Edie, gets out of prison and has to decide whether to help the woman who betrayed her. You don't need me to tell you that Edie decides to do the job, or that they have to go and round up a crew, or that there are unforeseen complications, double crosses, or are they? If you want a queer sci-fi with Hawaiian elements, then this is the book for you. It executes on what it is exactly. If that doesn't appeal to you, consider whether you can overcome the tropey fun. If not, then this book probably isn't for you. 2 out of 5 stars. This book got a lot of positive press, so I was happy to jump in. The first few pages of this book feel like an unpleasant slap to the face. This book is a first contact story, and I cannot get enough first contact stories, so I was also very excited. Page 1. So I'm quoting here. Gian Anna Sanjari comes with a few items of defect. She's too honest, like a German oncologist. She does a lot of disruption. Repeatedly, she will say, "This is stupid. You are stupid, and I refuse to do it until you convince me otherwise." She has actually shot people. What if Anna reads your "No, Anna, what the fuck" email and pulls a Glock on you in the bathroom? That came up in an HR complaint once. The implied Glock threat. As if there is something in her which remembers that day, which broadcasts the memory of the Turkish past into the American present. Though Anna cannot remember the kind of pistol the man in the red beret gave her. A Glock? A Makarov? Something Czech? Who the fuck cares? So we get immediately that Anna is an unlikable character, and an extremely unlikable character at that. Writing unlikable characters is hard. You have to give them some sort of competency or central relationship that's attractive. But then the character wasn't also likable in any ways, and the writing seemed choppy. Then the character is Kurdish because, of course, she is. This could actually be a very interesting point about having an unlikable Kurdish person who is very scarred from all of the trauma of growing up in the Kurdistan region. But it's actually a white man writing a Kurdish character because, of course, it is. And the fact that the main character is Kurdish is supposed to make her relevant and interesting, right? DNF. The Sorrows of Young Werther. You might wonder where this novel fits in this month's theme. Sorrows of Young Werther was written in 1774 by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Historical changes in romantic love are evident in this novel better than anywhere else in literature. For the first time, marriage isn't about getting things from your partner, be they power, money, or shelter, for example. Now, marriage is about getting everything from your partner. Love, partnership, emotional connection. What happens when the person you love doesn't love you back? What if she can't love you back because she's already engaged? What choices can you make? If you're interested in classic literature or the evolution of love, then this book is for you. Personally, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Attached. The new science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love. This is another work of nonfiction I read to further understand interpersonal relationships, specifically of the romantic variety. There were 2 main takeaways from this book for me. 1, being in a romantic relationship with another person affects you physiologically. It gives each partner such health benefits as deeper breathing and lower heart rate. Part of the reason it's hard to break up with somebody, even though that they're a bad match for you, is because you're asking your physical body to forego those health benefits that you're receiving from your partner. I think that's a relevant explanation to a lot of people. Your head says, I shouldn't be in this relationship. The body physically has a hard time breaking free of that relationship. 2, the second major takeaway from this book for me is that the majority of the dating pool is avoidant. So this book talks about the 3 main attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, and secure. Emotionally avoidant is one of those psychology terms that is tossed around with reckless abandon, and that minimizes a lot of its import. It's kind of like the term traumatized when someone's minorly inconvenienced. Trauma is terrible, and it should be something that's addressed in the proper setting. You're not traumatized just because another person was a little mean to you. You're merely inconvenienced. What I didn't realize before I read this book was the actual meaning of emotionally avoidant. It doesn't mean that you merely avoid your emotions or that you avoid displaying your emotions. It means that you avoid establishing an emotional connection with another person. An avoidant person sees another person's attempt to connect emotionally as being too needy, even though there's quite a bit of biochemistry that predisposes humans to form emotional connections with one another. The avoidant person in a relationship will pull away because their would-be partner seems needy, and this pulling away by the emotionally avoidant person firms the avoidant person's belief that everyone is too emotional and the emotionally avoidant person is better off single. And that's why the dating pool is full of them. These sorts of people don't end up in relationships. whereas anxiously attached and securely attached people do. Having said that, I can't speak to the quality of the rigor of the research on this book. With nonfiction books, and self-help books especially, you have to take their conclusions with a grain of salt. So I'd recommend this book only to readers who can keep in mind the fact that not every so-called fact in this book is the gospel truth, or even necessarily truth for that matter. Even though I wasn't expecting a serious emotional truth, I also took the book's "Which attachment style are you?" quiz, and I got mixed results. 2.5 out of 5 stars. All About Love. Bell Hooks is one of my favorite writers ever. She is such an interesting cultural theorist who is able to combine different levels of academic discipline with pop culture in ways that are not insincere. Her ability to weave together disparate discourse from philosophy to literary criticism, literature, current events, and pop culture is second to none. We Real Cool remains one of my favorite books of all time. A consistent theme of hers really resonates with me. There is no feminism without male liberation. In the beginning of this book, All About Love, Bell Hooks does what no other writer seems to be able to do. She defines love succinctly, usefully. Her definition is love is going out of your way for someone's betterment. That definition holds up to scrutiny because someone can claim to love you even when you don't believe they have your best intention in mind. So that's the first chapter. Then Bell Hooks goes into wide generalization, theology. No, I'm not kidding you. Literal theology. And if you don't agree with her on her application of religion, then you're wrong. Whether or not you're religious, I find it hard to believe. Many people will appreciate the specific application of theology and love, especially from what they expect to be a serious sociological study. In this book, Bell Hooks also makes some controversial remarks, even by her own standards, about domestic violence, Nicole Simpson, and Monica Lewinsky. The first chapter was supremely useful. In retrospect, the score seems a little high, but I'm not one to change scores retroactively. 3.5 out of 5 stars. So this month's cumulative average was 3.22, which brings my year average to 3.077.